So you want to know why you're not growing? Today, we're jumping into a fantastic series by lifter Thomas O'Neill that lays out 9 no-nonsense rules for building muscle. If you feel like you're spinning your wheels in the gym, trust me, this is for you.
I mean, it's the absolute worst feeling, right? You're in the gym, you're consistent, you're sweating, you're pushing hard, but you look in the mirror and nothing. The scale doesn't budge. You're not alone in this. And here's the thing. It's probably not about working harder. It's about working smarter.
And this is exactly why we're listening to this guy. Thomas O'Neill has been there. He put on an incredible 65 pounds of muscle. So these 9 rules, they're not just theories from a textbook. This is the stuff he wishes someone had told him when he was just starting out.
Okay, let's dive right in. The very first thing you've got to realize is that building muscle doesn't start when you pick up a dumbbell. Nope. It starts up here in your head with understanding what you're actually trying to accomplish.
Rule number 1 is learn your anatomy. Now don't tune out, this sounds way more complicated than it is. Just think of it like this. Every muscle has fibers that run in a certain direction, kind of like the grain in a piece of wood. To grow that muscle, you have to do a movement that shortens those fibers along their natural path. Take your chest, for example. Its main job is to bring your arm across your body. That's it. So any chest press or fly that's going to work has to follow that motion. Knowing this basic stuff stops you from wasting your time on exercises that just let other muscles take over.
So once you got that basic knowledge down, it's time to actually build your workout plan. But here's the secret. There is no one perfect workout. There's only the perfect workout for you.
And this leads us straight into rule number 2. You have to personalize your exercise choices. Look, we're all built differently. Different arm lengths, leg lengths, everything. So that exercise a famous bodybuilder swears by, it might feel awful for you. The real goal is to find movements where you can actually feel the muscle you're trying to work. That's the mind-muscle connection. And it's not just some weird gym bro concept. It's real science. When you feel it better, you're literally recruiting more parts of that muscle, which creates more tension, and that tension is what tells your body, hey, we need to grow.
So, how do you find these magical exercises that work for you? Well, that brings us to a point from later in the list, rule number 5. You gotta try everything. Seriously, get your hands on dumbbells, play with the cable machines, use the weird-looking contraptions. Don't let anyone convince you that one is better than another. Thomas actually admits he made a huge mistake early on by avoiding free weights, and it caused him problems down the line. You have to experiment to find what your body truly responds to.
All right, so you've got the knowledge, you've got a list of exercises that feel good for you, awesome. But none of that matters if your execution is sloppy. This is where we talk about making every single rep count. And the first rule of execution is a game changer. Rule number 3, film your form. I know, it feels a little weird to set up your phone in the gym, but it is absolutely non-negotiable. Thomas shares this really powerful story about how he discovered his shoulder blade was winging out on him, something he never would have seen or felt. And over time, it led to his whole upper body becoming imbalanced. We're talking different size shoulders, different size biceps. So filming yourself isn't just about lifting more weight. It's about making sure you don't mess your body up for the long run.
Okay, next up is Rule 4, progressive overload. It sounds technical, but it's the most basic principle of growth. Your muscles will not get bigger unless you give them a reason to, and that means constantly challenging them to do more. This little system on the screen is probably the simplest, most effective way to do it. Just pick a rep range, say 10 to 12 reps. Find a weight that you can barely get for 10. Then your mission for the next few weeks is to fight for 11 reps, then 12 reps with that same weight. As soon as you hit 12, boom, add a little more weight, drop back down to 10 reps, and start the whole process over again. It gives you a clear, measurable way to get stronger.
And to make sure that progressive overload is actually working, you have to follow what is actually rule number 8. You've got to train to failure, or at least really, really close to it. Why? It all comes down to something called mechanical tension. That's the force that's literally pulling on your muscle fibers and signaling them to grow. And guess what? The most growth-stimulating tension happens in those last few, gritty, difficult reps of a set. You know, the ones where you're shaking a little? If you stop your set as soon as it gets a little uncomfortable, you're basically leaving all the good stuff on the table.
Okay, let's zoom out for the last part. We've covered reps and exercises, but all of that needs to fit into a bigger, smarter strategy. This is about playing the long game, so you can keep making progress year after year.
Which brings us to rule number 6. You've got to manage your training volume. Volume is just a fancy word for how much total work you're doing, and it's a total Goldilocks situation. If you do too little, your muscles don't get the signal to grow.
But if you do too much, you just dig yourself into a hole of fatigue and you can't recover for the next workout. The general guideline you'll see is around 10 to 20 sets per muscle a week, but the most important word there is guideline. You have to find the sweet spot that works for your body and your ability to recover.
So, how do you organize that volume throughout the week? Rule 7 couldn't be simpler. Hit each muscle at least twice a week. It usually only takes a muscle about 72 hours to recover. So if you're only training, say, your chest on Monday, you're missing out on a whole other chance to hit it again later in the week when it's rested and ready to grow some more.
And that brings us to the last rule of strategy. Rule number 9, not all muscles are the same. You have to manage your volume based on how big the muscle is. Think about it. Your legs are a massive, complex system of different muscles. They can handle and often need a ton of work, like 20 sets a week. But a tiny little muscle like your bicep, it might be perfectly happy and grow just fine with only 6 sets. It's all about being smart with where you spend your energy.
So I know, that was a lot to take in, but honestly, it all boils down to just a few key principles that you can take with you to the gym, like tomorrow.
Let's just recap these 4 pillars real quick. First, you need the knowledge. Understand what the heck you're actually doing. Second, customization. Build a plan that's made for your body, not somebody else's. Third, execution. Make every single rep count by mastering your form and pushing the intensity. And finally, strategy. Play the long game with smart volume and frequency.
So here's the most important part. Knowing this stuff is useless if you don't do anything with it. So I want you to look at these rules and ask yourself honestly, which one is your biggest weakness right now? Where are you leaving gains on the table? Is it that you're not filming your form? Are you stopping your sets too early? I want you to pick one, just one, and make it your mission to fix it in your very next workout.